Hi, my name is Simon Courtenage, and I'm a Principal Lecturer in the Faculty of Science and Technology at the University of Westminster. This video diary is for me to document and share my experiences of being part of a mobile learning project being run by my faculty. This is a 2-year pilot project which involves giving out iPads to about 250 staff and more than 2,000 second and third year students on our undergraduate degrees. And the aim is to use the iPads to eventually transform teaching and learning in the university. It's a very huge and ambitious project. Last week I gave my first lecture as part of the mobile learning project. Now I've been appointed one of the staff digital leaders, staff who've been asked to kind of trial the various apps on the iPad in the classroom and provide support to other colleagues who want to take part in the project. So I prepared for the class with the aim of using 2 or 3 of the apps on the iPad, ones that we'd used in our training sessions to teach. The 2 apps that I used were Padlet and Nearpod, both of which allow you to run activities in the class. Padlet creates a web page where students can type comments to provide, for example, feedback on a topic or provide answers to questions you want to ask. My question was a rather general one. It was simply, what are your aims for the module? Now, out of about 40 students, I got about 28 comments, and not really everyone engaged with the activity. And only about 8 answers were actually on topic, of which most of them were fairly general. It's a further web programming module, so most of the comments that were on topic were along the lines of learn web development or learn PHP and MySQL, things like that. Of the off-topic ones, of which there were quite a few, I think my favourite was simply the word kebabs. Anyway, the biggest problem though was getting students to access the Padlet. I used a QR code which I displayed on the projector screen, so the students could use a QR code reader on the iPad to pick up the web address and access the Padlet in the browser. But either the app or the iPod camera aren't really fine enough to pick up the QR code image, even from 4 rows away in the classroom. And like this one behind me, the class was fairly shallow. And what it meant was a lot of the students were having to get up and move forwards in order for their camera to pick up the QR code. This obviously meant a lot of disruption and moving around in the class. I think the same would have happened if I'd followed the advice in the training sessions, which was to put A4 sheets with the QR code image around the room. There would still have been a lot of people getting up and moving around so their cameras could pick up the QR code image. The advice from a colleague was to use Padlet at the start and the end of the session, so points in the class where they're already up and they're already moving around. But I think it's not really suitable for the start of a class, because generally you get people drifting in for the first 20 minutes or so of the class, and if you're constantly having to stop and remind them to pick up the QR code on their camera, then you're still going to get some disruption in the flow. So I think this week I'll simply use it at the end of the class to get feedback on that particular session. About Nearpod, the nice thing is that you can run quizzes live in the class, and this is what I used it for last week. I set up a quiz, I published it, I selected live session, and then the students could type in the code for the Nearpod quiz in their own Nearpod app and then run the quiz at their own pace. The one thing that I forgot was to disconnect my iPad from the projector, because the teacher's iPad contains an overview screen with everyone's scores listed by name, whatever name they type in when they start the quiz. And halfway through I saw one student frantically waving at me and saying, scroll down, because of course their score with their name was visible to everyone in the classroom. The only thing I'm not really very keen about with Nearpod is the difficulty of setting up the quiz. It seems designed only for one-line questions and one-line answers. And of course, teaching programming, I need sometimes to display blocks of code, either in the questions or in the answers. And the only way I could get around this sort of limitation was to put the code, or take a screenshot of the code, and then attach the screenshot as an image to the question, which you can do in a nearpod quiz. In fact, the best app I used was PowerPoint, using PowerPoint on the iPad. And I discovered quite by chance, when you're in the slideshow mode, if you tap the top of the screen, you get a pen icon, which will then allow you to draw on the screen with your finger. And this was very useful to me because it meant I could show, for example, blocks of code. I could then draw a little circle around it with my finger in order to relate it perhaps back to some theory that I'd previously talked about. So this was actually very useful. But it simply took me back to when I started lecturing 15 years ago, and we were using acetates on overhead projectors, and we could use marker pens to draw on the acetate. So is that really progress? So the things I learned last week were these. First of all, using apps in the classroom requires quite a lot of classroom management. When we were switching from activity to teaching or vice versa, constantly having to say, let's be quiet, let's concentrate on the task, shh, and so on. And it's particularly the case, I think, when they're doing something unfamiliar or you're using an unfamiliar app. You need lots of preparation, perhaps even a little bit of rehearsal, so you can't really decide in midstream, suddenly just decide to start using an app. It really does need setting up and preparation beforehand. Third thing, unplug your iPad when you're using nearpod quizzes in live session so that everyone's scores aren't broadcast to the entire class. And lastly, I think leave iPads to the end of the class. My experience last week was that they're not really a mid-class activity because of the difficulty in getting access to the Padlet. This week, I'm going to try something slightly different. I'm going to give the students a block of code as an image and then get them to use an app like Sketch to actually mark up the code to show that this bit of code does this bit of code does that, and so on, and then get them to drop it back to me so that I can select one or two representative examples and then discuss it with the entire class, so that there's some form of collaboration going on. So we'll see how that goes in the next entry of this diary. See you soon.